We know that Biden and G7 leaders are meeting right now to discuss potentially the next round of sanctions. But according to your story, a lot of officials knew that the sanctions earlier this week would be underwhelming and wouldn't work. So what then would be considered crippling sanctions that wouldn't hurt people around the world? I mean, is that sort of the fine line that these leaders are sort of talking about right now?
Right. That's the biggest question is how do you find a way to inflict enough pain on Vladimir Putin and Russia's economy to try to deter him from doing anything further or punish him sufficiently that his ability to continue this invasion of Ukraine is hamstrung, but at the same time make sure that there's not so much blowback to the U.S. and European economies that they end up falling into recession or something even worse. So that's always the balance that they're trying to walk. I think what you're going to see today is likely the announcement of export controls by the United States. So anything with high level of U.S. technology like microchips will be barred from being exported to Russia. So what you're going to see is really an effort to do two things. One, inflict a short-term economic cost, sort of shock and awe economic cost approach, and then also inflict longer-term ambitions. So target Russia's desire to wean itself from its economy being solely based on oil and gas into more of a technology powerhouse. So they're going to go after that as well.
Well, I'm wondering here if you can outline, Nick, some of the issues that the U.S. and the EU face in placing these sanctions. What would hurt the economy of those two regions if bigger sanctions come into play?
Well, the big issue obviously is energy and how you pay for energy. So what the U.S. has been pushing for, and we are expecting to see some version of this, is a restriction on dollar clearing. So to make it much more difficult for Russian banks to conduct transactions in dollars, that would essentially cut a lot of them off from the U.S. financial system. Of course, the problem there is that's how a lot of European companies pay for all the oil and gas that they get from Russia. So if you start to do that, you could have real after effects and shocks for European companies that suddenly find that they're not able to pay for the gas that they need from Russia. So the U.S. and Europe are trying to find that balance between, okay, inflicting that pain on Russian banks, but also making sure that European companies are able to get the gas they need to heat homes across the continent. So that's really going to be the big one. It'll be fascinating to see how that plays out today.
Nick, do you think the goal here is to deter Putin from further moving in, or is it really just to send a unified message from Western nations that they are opposing what he's doing? I mean, because I think it was interesting. One of your sources said that sanctions are a tired tool. So I'm curious sort of what the motive is from leadership.
Well, it's a great question, and it's one of the most interesting things I found in reporting this story, because from the very start, the feeling was, okay, let's try to threaten these sanctions and detail how bad these sanctions are going to be to try to deter Vladimir Putin from invading. That was what I was told over conversations with a couple dozen people, that they really felt economic deterrence was not something that was going to work against Vladimir Putin. They felt they had few good options, so they went ahead and did it anyways. Now, obviously, we see the proof is in the pudding. Vladimir Putin has not been deterred. The invasion is underway. So the message has shifted. What they're saying now is, obviously, this is not about deterrence anymore. It is about economic punishment, using these sanctions, ratcheting up sanctions as much as possible to inflict economic punishment, but also to show the rest of the world, to send a message to China, other countries that might be tempted to carry out incursions like this. Look, you only united the West, and we're showing that there are costs for doing this. We're not going to let you get away with it.
Right.
Of course, we'll see what happens.
Nick, just like 20 seconds here, honestly, is a lot of this beyond sanctions and a wholesale shift of how we source our energy and economic powers?
Well, I mean, that'll be the next really big thing. And you are now seeing a lot more from European leaders from the UK. Listen, we finally need to wean ourselves off of Russian oil and gas, whether that's through a clean economy or getting it elsewhere. It seems there is finally some sense of urgency about doing that.